just for me, it was being able to hold on to, like, there is goodness in this time, and just it was a physical representation to me of, like, this baby was here, and, this he's not here with me anymore, but getting to see, like, there's, like, life coming from this. Um, I think it helps with the grieving process to be able to pump and just imagine these babies having their lives sustained because of my baby's life.
Welcome to the Breastfeeding Diaries episode 10. And today we are joined by one of my old friends from college. Her name is Laurel, and she has a really amazing story to share. I was really inspired by her. I saw some of her posts on social media. And so I just want to hear it straight from her, and we'll go ahead and dive in. So, welcome to the show, Laurel.
Hi, Haley. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, tell me first what you're doing now.
I'm a video editor, so I get to be home all the time, which is awesome with my sweet little Marshall, who's about to be 3 months old. And I live in Midlothian, Texas, and it's great. And yeah.
Awesome. So, kind of walk me back all the way to your childhood. What was your experience with breastfeeding? How did you see mom or cousins, aunts breastfeeding? Like, what did that look like for you?
I don't have a lot of early memories of being a child with breastfeeding, but I'm the oldest of four. And so I have a brother that's 2 years younger than me and a sister that's 4 years younger than me. And then I have a brother who's 13 years younger than me. So the brother that's 13 years younger, that's probably my most formative memory because I was 13.
Wow.
And I just remember um, just kind of being a little helper with my mom. I'd help just make sure she was all good, have everything she needed. And I think, that was also a time, though, that I was you're so uncomfortable around pretty much everything and anyone, but especially body things, and so I think I gave her a lot of privacy, but, I think I always had a lot of respect for just that nurturing and taking care of, and, I always looked forward to motherhood. I think in the back of my mind, that was part of it, just, like, getting to take care of a baby in every way possible.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, getting ready for your first pregnancy, was that like you and your husband planned? Was it a surprise? How did that go?
Yeah, I think the moment we met, I was like, "I cannot wait to be a mom," and I met, him, and I feel like, you meet your person, and the puzzle pieces just kinda come together. I was like, "Man, I can't wait to see you become a dad someday, and I can't wait for us to be parents," and so that was always in conversation and on the table, but like most people, I think I had kind of an idea of what I wanted life to look like whenever we had kids, and that meant, okay, we're in a second-story apartment, that's not what I'm envisioning for like, I'm not lugging a baby up this flight of stairs, and so we lived in an apartment for our first 2 years of marriage, and then just to try to kind of, you know, make it ahead a little bit, we ended up moving in with my husband's grandfather for 9 months, which was a really sweet time of life that enabled us to save up money and then buy our first home. So, the second that it was like, "Okay, our offer got accepted on this home," I was thinking, "Okay, like, it is time to start our family." Like, I could not wait for that. So, pretty much as soon as we got into our house, we were, like, very serious about starting a family, and it's funny in high school, you think like, you're taught, "Oh my gosh, the minute you do anything, you're gonna get pregnant."
Yep.
And then here we were 8 months later going, "What are we doing wrong?" Like, I expected this to be so much easier, and, so, yeah, it took 8 months for us to get pregnant, and then just when we finally got pregnant, it was incredible. Like, we had waited so long and just were so excited, and of course, like most people with their first pregnancy, felt also not ready at all, but we're like, "Okay, we're doing this." Like, it was a lot of joy.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I guess kind of if you're open to it, start telling me what happened next as you celebrated that first pregnancy.
Yeah, so we found out we were pregnant on December 18th of 2023, and, um, I'm trying to think. Yeah, it was, Christmas shortly after. I had these great plans that I was gonna tell the family at Christmas, and then I got the flu, like, bad. Like, hadn't gotten my flu shot, that was so dumb, and just got really sick, and so we had to kinda postpone telling family, but then, rescheduled Christmas plans, and then finally got to tell them. And then I had an OB appointment, with somebody in town that I ended up deciding like, I had never visited them before, but they only had privileges at these certain hospitals, and after doing some research, just decided those hospitals weren't really gonna be a good fit, and so ended up having to do more research and finding a different OB to make an appointment with. So after all that was said and done, we didn't have a first OB appointment, to do any scans or anything until 14 weeks into the
Wow.
pregnancy. So it was pretty far into it.
And
Um,
were you nauseous or you have any symptoms or was it pretty chill?
it was pretty easy. I think I was a little nauseous, after coming off of the flu. I felt like, okay, just not having the flu, I felt great. Um, but no, the nausea wasn't bad. I still felt like I had a lot of energy. Um, it was a pretty easy first trimester, and I really appreciated that.
And so
But
you hadn't gotten any like Doppler, you hadn't even heard the heartbeat yet.
I didn't hear the heartbeat until 14 weeks. Yeah, so we heard the heart went in, heard the heartbeat. It was like incredible. I cried. It was just a really amazing moment. And then we had the ultrasound and, got to see all the things. And then she just was really taking her time. And at the end, she was like, "Well, I'm seeing a couple things I'm a little concerned about." And it's like, I felt like I could hear a pin drop. Your heart just like stops because you're like, "Well, I'm like seeing this baby kick and move. I'm hearing a heartbeat. What could be wrong?"
Yeah. So, and I did want to ask, so you said you're in Midlothian. So is that in the DFW area?
Yeah, yeah,
So you had
so, like,
access to lots of different hospitals. Okay. I was thinking with
yeah.
small town and so yeah, that
It
helps.
it feels like a small town, and it kinda is a small town, but we are near, like, so much.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we had access to quite a few hospitals.
Yeah. And so this ultrasound was with an actual OB or was it with just an ultrasound tech?
It was with the OB,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. So she's going along and then she says, there's something that doesn't look right.
Yep, yep, she was concerned about the shape of his head. Um, it from my perspective, I couldn't see anything wrong, but my husband, he's a firefighter, paramedic for the city of Dallas, and there were plenty of things during his paramedic school he had to see, and he had seen enough to know, like, "Okay, I can see that there is something concerning," but we really weren't sure what it was, and for anyone who has been through something like this, you know that there are, like, words that replay in your head or things that are said or moments, and I just will forever remember the words she told us of, like, when we were leaving, she said, "I want you to stay cautiously optimistic," and I was like, "Okay," like and it's funny because I think that was supposed to make us feel a little better, but I honestly think it made me feel a little worse of, "Man, I think this is more concerning than I thought it was," and I have always been someone who's kinda looked at life through rose-colored glasses. I had been through things in life just like anybody has that I would consider, like, hard things, grandparents passing away or just general struggles. But this was the first, like, really difficult, like, truly hard thing I've been faced with. And so they always tell you, don't go home and just get on the internet And it's like, how are you supposed to not do that? Like, you don't have answers, and so you want some comfort, and, I think, you wanna know what you're in for, and so we started doing our research. She had suggested some of the things that they would maybe be looking at was possible Down syndrome, but less of that and more of any of, like, the trisomy 18s or trisomy whatevers. Um, and all of a sudden you become an expert on all these medical things that you've never
Wow.
heard of before.
Yeah.
But, we ended up she scheduled us, so 2 days later, we went in to see a specialist. And now being on the other side of this, I was just like, "Oh, wow, that's great. We can get an appointment so quickly." Now I know, okay, if they get you in that fast, you should be concerned, like, they are really thinking this is something serious. And so we 2 days later went into a specialist, and they did a more in-depth ultrasound, and they were very thorough. And I was holding my breath, but I think I just never saw it playing out as anything other than them going, "Oh, this was just a mistake," or, "Oh, something did look a little off, but we have better technology, and we're gonna find, like, everything's perfect and fine, and you don't have to worry. And then we're gonna go home, and it's gonna be fine." But, the so the initial tech came in, did our scans, she was upbeat and friendly, of course, like they should be, but I was, looking trying to read her face, like any indication of what this might be. And then the main OB came in, and this is another time where it's like words seared into my head. She started with "unfortunately," and, as soon as she said that word, I was like, "Oh my gosh." And she said, "Unfortunately, your baby has anencephaly, which is fatal. Like, there is a 0% chance your baby is gonna live." Um, and sorry. Um,
Take
she
your time.
said, "It is incredibly likely that he will make it." This is how we didn't know it was a he. Later found out it was a boy. Um, she said, "There's a 0% chance he'll live after being born, but is very likely that he will make it full term in this pregnancy." And then, she gave us some options. The only option on the table for us was to get to meet our baby, and as much as he would grow, that's what we wanted to take. So then we went home, and it was like, just it was a blur, and some moments are very clear in my head, but man, it felt like time froze right then. Just all these plans that we had kind of exploded in our face, and we had a lot of decisions to make.
And
Um,
did they explain just right there in that appointment what that diagnosis entails and all of that and the odds of that and everything, or was that something you started to find out later?
in terms of, like, how rare it is, or
Yeah, or like you called it's called anencephaly?
yeah,
Or
anencephaly.
anencephaly, and that affects, like, their brain development, or is it just, like,
Yeah,
a
sorry.
genetic, like, the whole body?
So, basically, what it means is it can go about a couple different ways in babies, but in the end, it is their skull has not finished forming. It's a neural tube disorder, so it's, like, very that's what you take prenatals for, that's what you take folic acid for, is to help with that neural tube development. That's what is helping their brain form, that's what's helping their skull form. And when anencephaly occurs, it means that their skull is not finished forming, and basically their brain is going to grow outside of their skull, and it's gonna be, um, exposed to amniotic fluids, which in the end will, and you can cut this if this is, like, too gross, but, like, their brain would essentially dissolve. And the reason that they can make it full term is because that is something they don't need in the womb. Like, all they everything they which is really a miracle, everything they need, they're getting from the umbilical cord, and you're able to sustain that life, but it's outside of the womb. A baby would not be able to survive without their brain and without their skull being finished formed.
Yeah.
Ugh.
And so, you mentioned, like, taking prenatals and things like that, like, at what point, or maybe it's later in the story, were you feeling, like, maybe some guilt or some thoughts of, like, "What could I have done?"
1,000%. And we during that pregnancy and after the pregnancy, we ran all kinds of tests. I did so much blood work, like, I'm surprised I didn't pass out from some of this blood work I did. And the answer in the end was there's no reason. Like, there's if sometimes these things just happen, and I felt and to this day, I still question it, but I got the flu so bad, and I hadn't gotten my flu shot, and that has always been in the back of my mind of, like, you know, I was so sick. Was I taking my prenatals then? I don't know, like, and I've shared that with my OB of, like, "What like, did I do this?" And the answer from them is still, "No, this just, unfortunately, is something that happens," and, I think as a human, I want resolve, I want a reason, and going into a second pregnancy, I wanted some sense of control of, like, "Man, if there was something I did then that means I could do the opposite this time, I could make it better," and that just wasn't the case. Thankfully, with them saying there was no reason, that also came with the chances of this happening again are not 0, but they're next to 0, like, it's very unlikely because there wasn't a reason that this would happen again, so that gave me some hope, but I think anytime you lose a baby, that's always gonna be seared into your mind of, like, "I do not wanna go through this again."
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, I didn't experience that, like, a loss, but with my first, I had him premature, and all of those things you described where it was just like, "Why?" And the doctors don't know why, definitely, like, made me question, like, my body and I think I was similar to you where, like, with my first pregnancy, I was like, "Oh, it should be easy, everything's gonna be smooth." And then going into my second, I just had, like, so many more fears, like, every single step of, like, even conception or, like, getting ready to, like, try, just a ton more fears than I had the first time, so I definitely relate a little bit to that, but so you went home and, had you did you tell your family, your friends? What happened next?
So, after we got the diagnosis, we immediately in the parking lot were on the phone with our parents, and I remember sobbing. It really it was gut-wrenching, and the unfortunate thing was my husband was working that day. He had gotten a few hours off to come to this appointment, and he had to go back to the fire station, and so my mom, she's so incredible. She dropped everything and came to be with me. I was like, "That's just what I need right now." And it was actually one of my very best friends from college. She was my roommate. It was her birthday, and I had planned to have her and our other roommate over for dinner that night, to celebrate her birthday, and I called them. I was like, "Hey, this is what happened. This is what we found out. I need y'all to come over, and I need us to do birthday things, and I need to not even think about this right now because I can't even handle how painful this is." And it was such a beautiful moment looking back on it, just my 2 best friends and my mom being there, and we just cried and we laughed and, like, had a semi-normal evening, made a nice dinner, had cake, and, um, that was that night. I feel bad for my husband having to go back to work, and they would have let him off, but we both were just like, "You know, maybe it'd be better for you to be distracted." And now looking back, I'm like, there was no way you can distract as much as you
Yeah.
try from news like that. Like, it's so devastating.
And at this point, just right there in the office, did y'all say, like, "Yeah, we're gonna carry this pregnancy to as far as it goes," or did you leave that open at all? Or right there in the office, you were like, "Yeah, we're doing this," so you just knew you were still gonna be pregnant?
I think I think we left it open for a minute, and that, like, is painful and honestly embarrassing for me to say of, like, that we even considered any other option into taking him to term. And I think you're just so scared. Like, I was scared to hold for, like, lack of better terms, like, hold my dead baby. I couldn't even imagine that, like, choosing that, and then but the more we discussed it, it was just like, "Man, we've been given the gift of this life, and, he's not gonna have a life outside of the womb, but we can give him as best of a life as we can, uh, while he's still in my belly." And, um something that was really important to us that we began to discuss was, like, his legacy, and we decided that the best choice for using his life would be to donate his organs. So that was kinda the track that we were on. We started looking into different opportunities for donation. It's fairly rare for there to be an organ donation between 2 babies.
Right.
Um and the success rates are unfortunately not very high,
Yeah.
but just that there is even a chance, and so, I knew there was 0 chance for my baby to be saved, but the idea of, like, "Man, there's another mom getting terrible news about her baby, and my baby's life might be the thing to save hers," like,
Mm.
I I have to see that through, and so the new plan became, okay, I was gonna I had dreams of this beautiful, vaginal birth. Now it was, okay, you have to have a C-section because we need your baby to stay alive for this organ transplant. And that was so basically we would get to hold him possibly for a little bit. And the moment he started declining, they would have to take him. And just the image in my head of that moment was that was so hard. But like I said, we wanted to give life where we were losing ours.
So then, at this point, you're about you said 14 or 15 weeks, and then what happened next?
So I think it was weekly, we were doing appointments, coming in, getting ultrasounds, which, is this is my first pregnancy, I don't know what's normal, I didn't realize every week is not normal. Um, so we were doing weekly, and then we got to 17 weeks, went in for our regular appointment, and the tech is doing the Doppler. And she's searching. She's go, "Oh, this thing's being a little finicky. Let me go grab the OB." Now I know, like, it wasn't being finicky and, they just really wanted to make sure. But the OB came in, did the ultrasound, and told us there was no heartbeat and our baby had passed away. And, at the time, I could see this, but especially even more so now, I can see just that it was God's mercy that he passed away that early, that we didn't have to go through the motions of an entire pregnancy, and we still got to meet our baby, we still got to hold our baby for as long as we wanted. That was incredible, and it was such a hard outcome for so many reasons, but such a merciful outcome for so many reasons as well.
Yeah. Wow. So then at that point, at 17 weeks, there's no heartbeat. Then is there like an induction? I'm not as familiar with this part. Is it like a
No, that's
DNC
okay.
or like what is
I'll
that
tell you,
process?
I had no clue either. Like, they told us the heartbeat had stopped, and she said, you know, "You can you can decide to when, but we are gonna have to induce you." I was like, "Oh my gosh, okay." She's like, "Okay, we can do it tonight." And I was like, "Wait, hold on, what?" I'm just finding this out, and you're telling me I could have a baby tonight. So we were like, "Hold on." So we she gave us time, we went home. Same deal as a few weeks earlier. We were calling the families, sobbing, and, we talked about it. We decided to get induced the next morning. And so all of our families came over that night and we just like had a worship session and it was beautiful. And um my husband's parents stayed over the night and it was nice just being like taken care of. So the next morning we went in at 8 a.m. and I was induced by 9 a.m. And then he was born at 10:08 p.m. And that induction is, like, not for the weak. It is 400 times, and that sounds like an insane number, but that's what it is. It's 400 times the amount of medicine you would get to induce you, as opposed to, like,
Okay.
if you were off full term with a normal baby.
So, did you so I guess then you got to have a vaginal birth, but
Yeah.
did you have, like, an epidural? 'Cause that sounds so painful.
Oh,
How do
yeah,
they
no, I
do
had
that?
an epidural.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's something people don't really talk about because I think very, very early miscarriages are pretty common, fairly common to where, like, that one's a little bit more easy to wrap your mind around, but it's definitely hard for me to picture that for sure.
Yeah,
So
I had no clue, like, even size-wise, what size he was gonna be, like, we weren't sure when he had passed, um, and so the birth I'll just sum it up quickly, but it was so easy, and, I mean, I was having contractions for so long, and it was with that amount of medicine, like, you are off to the races, and so the epidural was 1000% necessary, and just like anybody who's had a vaginal birth, you're like, "I could kiss that man that gave me the epidural right on the mouth," because it was instant, just like, "Oh, thank you, pain relief." But I only had to be 6 centimeters dilated to have him, and so that was amazing, and then were considering they kinda told me, "Okay, now that he's here, we're gonna try to get the placenta, but if it doesn't come on its own within 15 minutes, we're gonna have to do a D&C," which is, like, insult to injury of, like, I'm going through such a painful thing. I didn't wanna have to go through that as well, but it came on its own, and that
mhm,
was such a blessing, and it really was for as hard of a time as that was, it was so beautiful just getting to hold my baby, and, like, I think there was so much somehow mental protection over that time of it just was a lot of joy despite how hard it was.
yeah. And so at at what point did you think about pumping? Like, was that a plan that you had earlier on, as part of this whole journey, or was it just right now and during this in the moment, like, "Oh, let's pump."
I I realized that I could donate my milk, I was like, "Absolutely, that's what I'm gonna do." I do think it was before he passed away. I've got a family member who is a lactation consultant, and she was the one who said, "Okay, it's the Mother's Milk Bank of North Texas, and they take donations, and it goes to NICU babies." And I was like, "That is incredible. I 100% like, any way I can use this pregnancy and this life for good, like, I wanna do that." And what was unfortunate to me was at the hospital, they never told me that option, um, and so if I didn't have this outside source, I don't know that I would have even known to do it,
Yeah,
and when they discharged me, they explained, "Okay, here's what you're gonna wanna do. You're gonna wanna put a lot of cold packs, you're gonna wanna do the cabbage leaves, wear, sports bras," but didn't explain to me at all if, like, "This is too dry, your milk cup." It just was they were just telling me, "Oh, okay, this is what you're gonna wanna do." And so I'm grateful that I had this outside information to know. Well, and I went back to that family member and said, "Hey, this is what they told me to do." And she was like, "No, no, no, don't do any of that. Like, if you are wanting to pump, that's not what you want to do." So I was glad to have somebody to talk to about that. But I wish it was more I wish it was presented to more families because I think I would imagine a lot of women would possibly want to do that. Just for me, it was being able to hold on to, like, there is goodness in this time, and just it was a physical representation to me of, like, this baby was here, and, this he's not here with me anymore, but getting to see, like, there's, like, life coming from this. Um, I think it helps with the grieving process to be able to pump and just imagine these babies having their lives sustained because of my baby's life.
Wow. So after you finished the procedure, when did you actually, like, start pumping?
I started pumping basically as soon as I got home from the hospital. So he was born 10:08 PM on the 22nd, and then the 23rd, we were able to spend all day in the hospital with him. That's kind of what they encourage. They said, "Stay as long as you want." So we got home probably like 9 PM the next night on the 23rd, and that night I started pumping.
Which pump did you use?
It was a Spectra. I'm not sure what model it was. It was loaned to me.
Yeah.
And it's like for that time, I had no preparation. And so it was by the grace of people bringing me things to make it happen.
Yeah.
Uh,
So, did you like, how long did it take to start getting milk? Because I would imagine, I mean, 24 hours after almost the baby's born, um, is kind of a long time to go without that stimulation, but it started to come?
yeah, it started to come, I think, pretty instantly, just like normal. It wasn't a lot at first, but we were still able to make it happen. And
Did you get up at night?
the first couple of nights I did. And then I kinda made the decision, like, this is something I really wanna do, but I can't not be getting good sleep and also be absolutely grieving at the same time, like, this is not good for me. And so I made a decision, "Okay, I'm gonna sleep at night, the full night and not pump, but I'm going to pump as often as I can during the day." And it definitely probably impacted how much I was able to produce negatively, but in the end, it was kinda that trade-off of like, "Okay, I'm doing this for good, but I can't be suffering
Yeah.
more than I already am."
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely, yeah, because most women, like you said, would just be doing the cabbage or, like, maybe a little bit of hand expression to relieve, but just, like, trying to reduce the amount of milk, whereas you were kind of trying to start it and get it going, but also you don't wanna, like, get it going forever, like, your goal wasn't really, like, nourishing a specific baby, it's just you were just providing what you felt like you could. So, and what was your goal then? Where you did you have, like, a set amount of weeks, or were you kinda just like, "Let's just see what happens?"
I was just thinking, "We'll just see where this goes, and I'll I'll know when it's time to stop, and I'll just wait till then."
Yeah. Okay, that we're hitting or about to hit our time, so
Yeah,
I'm gonna,
that's fine.
stop it and then get back on.
Okay.
Alright. So as far as pumping goes, you were using the Spectra, you were kind of just pumping to see what would happen. And then did as far as donating goes, did you kinda just, like, stockpile a bunch in the freezer and take it all at once, or did you have, like, multiple rounds where you kinda took fresh milk?
So I stockpiled, and had I pumped for longer, I probably would have done the multiple trips thing, but I only pumped. I think it was probably 2 or 3 months that I pumped for, maybe a little less. But I just I had quite a bit. I was really proud of it, And the kinda catalyst for me stopping was it was just for anybody pumping, it's exhausting, it's really hard, and having to kind of form your whole schedule around it, your whole life is kind of like, "Okay, my free time is in windows, and then it's my pumping time," and everything kinda has to happen around that. That was difficult, and
Yeah, how
not
did
having a
you
baby.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how did you, like, go hang out with friends or things being like, "Oh, I have to go pump," but, like, was everybody pretty understanding of your choice, or was it kind of like, "Oh, why does she have to go do
Oh,
that?"
yeah, no, everybody if they were saying that, I didn't hear it. Yeah, I think everybody was really understanding, and everybody was so heartbroken, and I think being able to see something good was good for everyone. To be honest, I really didn't get out of the house a whole lot during that time. It just was a hard time in life. Um, I and thankfully, a lot of people came to us and spent time with us, and I was grateful for that. I kinda took a pause on work during that time, which being freelance, that's a great thing is I could, and my husband took some vacation to be home for a while just so we could kinda process together. But the the ultimate catalyst for me stopping was I had a dear friend who had had a baby. So I had Elijah. Elijah's born March 22nd. I had a friend whose baby was born in January, and, we would all kinda Snapchat together, and she sent a picture of after she had pumped, it was just this, like, full bottle. It was probably, like, I don't know, it was something crazy, like 9 or 10 ounces, and I was looking at mine, I was barely even making an ounce, and I was just, like, so defeated, and I just remember just crying of, wow, I haven't thought about this in a long time. I just remember thinking in my head, "Man, my has already failed me once with this pregnancy, and here it is failing me again." Like, I wanted to do this, and now I can't, like, I'm not even doing enough now, and I just decided then, like, "Okay, it's time." Like, this is too sad to see me not producing that much. But
Yeah.
but in the end, I pumped it was 123 ounces that
Wow.
I was able to donate,
Yeah.
and looking back on it, I just like, I feel sad for that girl that was so disappointed in herself. Because now looking back, I'm able to be like, "Wow, how proud I should have been that I
Yeah.
even went through it."
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's part of why I wanted to have you on. I had throughout all of my breastfeeding journeys and everything, I would just get on social media and you get all of those reels that are, like, promoted to you, so just tons and tons of breastfeeding content that I was consuming, and one popped up, I think, early on when I was first breastfeeding my first, that said that she was bereavement pumping, and I was like, "What is that?" And went to look at her, and her whole account was named around her daughter who did not, I don't know if it was in the womb or afterwards, but she had lost her baby, and so she decided to pump, and she had been going for, like, months and or maybe a year, I don't know. It was, like, a lot, and she had so much milk and the whole account around it and obviously content built around it, and so I was like, "Oh, I literally never thought of that," and I just think that's so beautiful, and I'm sure there's lots of people that tell you that or think that you like, your strength and your grace and, like, how you did this thing that is really, really hard, so I want you to hear that for sure, like, that it is amazing what you did, but I know for you, it's probably like, "Yeah, I'm doing this, but there's so much grief and so much sadness, like, interwoven with it." And that's something that should be acknowledged too, for sure. Um, But yeah, that's just I can't even imagine. I mean, when you're trying to feed a baby that's actually, like, screaming at you and you're trying to, like, produce milk, it's hard, and then I know for me, like, pumping while my baby was in the NICU, like, he was there, he was alive, but he wasn't with me, and so you just don't produce as much when your body it really does know. So, like, the getting 1 ounce, like, that's totally understandable, like, your body knows there's you don't have those smells and the feels and the skin and the
Yeah.
touch, all of that. So it's just impressive that you're able to do some, but yeah, seeing your friend's milk and that's one reason a lot of people stop is they see this huge amount that other people do, and they think, "Oh, I'm supposed to be doing that," but, like, your body was doing exactly what it needed to do and even getting an ounce at a time. Okay, so then did y'all have, like, a memorial or anything or a funeral, anything like that?
We did. We were able to have a memorial. I think it was 2 months after he was born, and we planted a tree in his honor. We buried some of his ashes with it. But, yeah, we had people over, and it was interesting because when I was pregnant with him, we were planning a burial. We were gonna have a more traditional kind of funeral, which is it's, like, such a personal decision, I think, for some people. Some people don't want really any of that and don't want a big deal. To me, I was like, "No, this is a big deal." Like, it is strange having a funeral for a baby that's, like, none of these people never met, and, even you have only gotten to know in a small capacity, but for me, I needed that acknowledgement. Like, I needed to know I had done that for my child, that, we took the time to honor him with the people around us, but in my head, this day was just gonna be really somber and really hard, and even when he passed early, when we had the memorial, I put on this playlist that we had made for the funeral, and it was worship music, it was all kinds of music. I was like, "Man, this is honestly, this is such a drag, like, I don't want this," and so we put on a different playlist, and I just kind of realized, this is to remember him, this is our party for him, like, I'm never gonna get to throw my child a birthday party. This is his birthday party, we're celebrating his birth, and it was really I mean, it was sad for all the reasons it should have been sad, but it was really a nice day too, and just everybody kind of just recognizing the beauty of his life, and it was I was really grateful for that. And I just gave myself grace of, recognizing what do I need in this moment? Because there's some moments I needed to be sad. I needed it to just be a hard time, and there were other moments where I I needed some happy, and I needed some goodness and sunshine, and something I realized is that then and even now, I was pretty protective about how I wanted people to perceive his life, and I was really sensitive about it not being perceived as anything but good, which is a little silly because it's like, no, of course people are gonna see this and go like, "Man, not only is that really hard, that's really sad." And I needed the narrative to be like, "No, this is so beautiful." Like, and that's words I use a lot. "This is so beautiful, this is so joyful. What a blessing that he was in this world." And now I'm giving a little more grace for, like, it can be both things at the same time. It is really beautiful, and there's so much joy around Elijah's life. It is also super sad. Like, it's any baby that passes away is sad, and, just coming to terms with it, that his story can be both things and that both things matter.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. So at what point after all of that did you decide, okay, maybe it's time to try and have another baby and try again?
For I we even while we were still pregnant with him, that was something on our minds. We had been told if we were gonna do the C-section, we would have to wait 18 months before trying again. So his due date was August 26th. So we were in March, or I guess late February, hearing, "Okay, you can't even think about trying for a baby until, like, I think it was 2 years from now." And that was gut-wrenching of like, "Well, we wanted this baby now, and we had this I'm pregnant, and now we're hearing, like, you're not gonna hold a baby that's coming home with you for 2 years." And so that broke our hearts, and so after Elijah was born and we kind of consulted with our OB of like, "Okay, this isn't the case anymore." Like, she told us, "I'd like to see you, you know, not be pregnant for like, I wanna see 3 months of healing, and then you can consider trying again." And at that time, I was like, "I can't even imagine trying again for another baby." Like, I'm just all consumed by everything with this baby. But then the 3 months passed, and we kind of said, "Okay, I think our hearts like, we want another baby." And, I think we needed that time to come to terms with our desire for another baby does not mean that we didn't, like, want and still love this baby we just had. Like, our love for him can continue to exist alongside another child. And so I I think we only tried for a couple of months before getting pregnant again, and it was it was exciting, it was scary, like, just finding out I was pregnant, and it was sad. It was sad for it to be an end of a chapter of, like, okay, our only baby is Elijah, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, there's another one, and it was just so many mixed emotions, but I think just being so grateful, for another little life, and going into the start of that pregnancy, just realizing, "All right." I was so scared of the unknown with the first pregnancy, but now I've been through it. Like, now I've experienced all that there was to experience with that, and I just was like, "Okay, if I can survive that, whatever this pregnancy has to hold, even if we only have this baby for a short time, I will be devastated again, but I will be grateful again." And, like, any life is meaningful to us, and luckily, the entire pregnancy was easy. And it's funny because I think for anybody that's had a NICU baby or anybody that's had a hard time, you, like, and you can tell me if you feel this way or not, but you almost, like, a little bit resent those people that were like, "It was easy, it was perfect." But I think after, like, losing a baby, there's a little bit of like, "Okay, you have the right to have an easy pregnancy and an easy birth," and it was all of those things, so it was really beautiful. So our second son is Marshall, who's about to be 3 months old, and it just yeah, a great pregnancy. I wasn't very sick, and it was, um but even if I was, I think I just would have been so grateful every time that we had that vote of confidence of like, "Hey, this pregnancy is going good." And just knowing like, "Okay, I think we're really gonna meet this one." Um, and so the birth was beautiful, and I think the start of this breastfeeding journey was so informed by my pumping journey,
Yeah.
and it just made me realize all of the ways of, like, "Oh, man, this is how it's supposed to be." Like, and it's incredible to see
So did you
what
get to
it's
have
like to go through this and have my baby.
yeah, did you get to have, like, the golden hour, skin to skin, all that?
Yes, we had all of that. The team we had was really phenomenal, and actually, the nurse that delivered or that helped deliver this baby we requested her. She was the same nurse that delivered Elijah. And it was such a full circle moment, and that was sweet, and so she was so easy to talk to and, like, just tell all of our things, and it's funny because with Elijah, before we had his diagnosis, you know, I had the birth plan, I had everything I wanted of like, "Okay, I need the lights to be dim, I need this peaceful environment," and I just had this impression of, like, you're gonna have to fight your hospital staff for what you want, and I think it's hard. I think there are probably places where that is the case, unfortunately, but, we went through the birth of Elijah, and there was no plan for that, like, how do you plan for that? And realizing, like, these people have my back, like, they are looking out for my best interests, and so going into this birth, they're like, "Okay, do you have a birth plan?" I was like, "Yeah, the plan is to meet my baby, and that's it, like, that's all I want." And I think that release of, like, "Okay, I don't have to have this, like, tight grip on" of course I can have in my head what I want, and I'll advocate for it if I need to, but just knowing we had a team that we could trust and who knew our story and who celebrated with us over this new life, like, it was perfect, and so they were very good about, like, "We want you to have that golden hour, and like, anything you want, we want you to have it." And so it was really great.
And was his latch good and nursing going smooth?
It was immediately great. He was a pro from the get-go, and that's, kinda like what we talked about before we started, is sometimes I think it's just you can do everything, and if your baby is not on board, that just is how it goes, and I was just grateful that he was great from the get-go, but I had so much support too, and going into this birth, I was like, "You know what? Almost every time I feed, I want a lactation consultant to come in, and just every time he feeds, I wanna fine-tune this just a little bit more, and so that by the time we're leaving, they would go, "Okay, you are a pro, you are good, like, there are no questions." And I think having having them come in that often and just be able to watch and give me tips, and there's just so much I didn't know. It was it was so helpful, and I felt like that getting that great start has just helped us through the journey to continue to have a good relationship with breastfeeding, and I was very scared to start the bottles and the passies, but I was, gosh, so glad when we did because, man, it made a world of a difference.
Yeah. Did you have any fears, like, since you had only experienced, pumping after 17 weeks and you were only getting 1 ounce? Did you have any fears of, like, "Am I really gonna make enough?"
I think I just thought, surely with a baby here, it'll be fine. Like that I think I knew enough to know that situation was not normal, and my body knew it. My body knew there was not a baby here to feed. And so it was probably the best it could do in those circumstances. And I kind of hoped for the best, but like I said, the only goal was to meet my baby, and if the breastfeeding didn't go well, that was going to be incredibly disappointing. But I have such a greater perspective for, like, he is here and he is alive, and that is the only goal, so whatever we need to do to keep that, that's what we're doing, but of course, like anybody, I wanted to have a good breastfeeding journey, and I've been so lucky to have that.
So through all of this and even going back to, like, the moment that you found out about Elijah and then you said you kinda called in the troops to have a worship night. Is that something that, like, you and your husband have always, like, had or grown up with is just, "Hey, let's just jump in and worship," or was this really you hit this low moment and you really had to go there and worship? Like, what's the faith journey there?
Yeah, I mean, we had never done that before. We both grew up believers, and, as you know, I went to Abilene Christian University, so Christian college. and my husband started a Christian college. And so, yeah, we both were always believers, but I think into adulthood, we reach a phase that I think many people reach where you realize, like, "Oh, I'm kinda lukewarm about my faith." Like, I go to church on Sundays, like, I'm checking all the boxes, but my heart, I don't think my heart was 100% in it. But the second we got the diagnosis, it was just kind of a moment of like, "All right, my, like, ground, this house that I built up of all these great ideals of what I think my life is, has just been leveled, and I'm starting from ground zero here, and I I need to cling to God, like, I have nothing else." And I think it's a really beautiful place that God meets us in those moments. And, I think I had a lot of thoughts at that time, as many people probably do, of like, "Man, what what good God lets a baby die?" And that's like, I think people don't wanna say it, but I was faced with that reality of that thought of like, "God, like, I thought, I've been trying to do my best to, like, live for you. How could you let this happen?" And I think through the journey of having to really come to terms with that, just, like, going, "Okay, we live in this broken world. God God doesn't ordain the death of babies." Like, I don't believe that. I do believe he weeps with us over the death of our babies, and I do believe that he redeems those moments. I think he redeems that life, and he honors the life of our babies that have gone to heaven. And, alright, I don't even remember what the question was, but it's just
Yeah, I think you answered it perfectly, and I think it is really you explained it what the heart of it is that you already believed those things about life or that you were also growing and believing those things because everything that you did, like choosing to go through the pregnancy and choosing to donate and choosing to do all of these things is that you do see the value in life and that could only come from God. So, I think that's so beautiful. But my last question I was gonna ask too is throughout all of that, and then also now that you've experienced, like, postpartum with your baby, do you have any advice for the marriage side of things? Because I think sometimes people just everything you went through, it sounds like it would be a huge test to a marriage, and but yet you guys seem to still be so in love and so close. So, any tips or advice or things you learned from that?
yes, and to answer that question, I'll have to go back way further. Year 1 of our marriage was so hard. I think e a lot of couples have this, but we especially had a lot of people surrounding us telling us, "You guys are the perfect couple," while we were dating, and we felt like it, and it did feel like it, and I truly believe we are the perfect couple, we're great for each other. But then I think most people discover this, you get married, and you realize he's really used to his mom doing things this way, and I do things a different way, or I grew up with, like, seeing my parents have this relationship, but we're not having that, so what's wrong? Or, like, I feel like all kinds of things, inform your perception of what marriage is gonna look like, and just you are 2 completely different people, and all of a sudden, you're together trying to make it happen, and, it was a tough first year of just not being on the same page, but feeling like we had to put up this facade of being this rock solid, perfect couple. And my husband was actually the one to say, "Hey, I think we need to go to marriage counseling." And that was horrible for me to hear because I went, "Oh my gosh, this means I'm a failure at this marriage thing." And also, does this mean he thinks we're on the brink of divorce? Because that's what marriage counseling means, right? Like, it means you're you're about to call it quits. Like, this is a Hail Mary. And I am thankful for, like, his wisdom in that moment to I think a lot of times it's women going like, "I wish my man would go to counseling." And here was my husband going like, "I wish I could convince my wife that this is, like, okay for us to do." And I finally was like, "Okay, fine." And he basically had to drag me in there. But so we went to marriage counseling, and by the time we got this diagnosis, we were 3 3 plus years into marriage counseling of we have gone to marriage counseling once every 2 weeks for this we're about to be married for 5 years, so it's been 4 years. That is the secret. Like, truly, I mean, and if that's not your thing, mentorship. It's like if you're in a church, finding a couple that is way ahead of you, that you admire to speak life into you. But I think God divinely placed us in that hard time of life to be able to go to marriage counseling. Like, that set us up for being able to process together. And even then it was hard, but being able to know, like, okay, we know how to communicate now. That was probably the main thing. We know how to talk about these hard feelings together and just to be raw and honest and know that the other person is gonna, like, see our heart genuinely, and if we're struggling with it, we have somebody else to talk to. Like, I that hands down was what saved us during that hard time and continues to save us as we are now new parents to this beautiful baby that is so perfect and makes life so hard because we're not getting nearly as much sleep, and there's so many decisions we're having to make together, and sometimes I hear him choking and my husband doesn't, and that makes me mad. Or sometimes I'm up at night breastfeeding and I look over at him peacefully sleeping and I just imagine punching him in the face in his sleep. And like, I'm like, clearly I'm not going to do that. And it's a crazy person thing to think. But that's who I need my counselor for. Be like, hey, sometimes I just want to punch my husband. And there, that's all. I just need to tell you that.
Very valid, very valid. Like, I think anyone who's listening who's breastfed their babies or any mom, even if you do formula, dads just are not on the same wavelength at all. So, yes, definitely been through that. Um, I probably have like just punched him in bed, like, get up and get the baby. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story, Laurel. I hope that women who are listening to this will be just encouraged to know that they're not alone and that it is possible to have a rainbow story, or even if they're still waiting for their rainbow story, that they would just be encouraged by your story and your faith. And even when it comes to pumping, just your faith to do that and the gift that it was to the milk bank. And so, for those who are listening, if you want to connect with us, we are on Instagram at the Breastfeeding Diaries podcast, and you can also email us at breastfeedingdiaries@gmail.com. That's our email. So thank y'all so much for listening, and have a great rest of your day.